Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go on.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Before I get started, I've seen a lot of you guys over the last few days. I've heard a lot of stories. And I've seen this wonderful glow in your eyes. Everyone's here with a lot of enthusiasm. Are you guys enjoying yourselves? Yeah? Now, there are two people who are really chiefly, actually three people, who are chiefly responsible for your enjoyment. And those are Scott, Rich, and of course Stephanie, who's their engine behind it all. So I think they really deserve a wonderful round of applause for all the good work they've been doing. So, over the last few days, I've met a lot of you. Some of you are new faces I haven't seen before, but you've been very gracious in your introductions. Some of you are old friends I've seen before at my seminars or at other seminars and so on. And it's a welcome treat to see those faces again. And as I said, it's actually been tremendous seeing the enthusiasm, the energy, just the acceptance you guys have of each other. This is such a wildly different audience, such a wildly different set of speakers. And everyone's enjoying themselves, everyone's getting something of value for themselves. I think that's a tremendous thing. I think Rich and Scott really have done a wonderful thing for that. But you know, the thing that impressed me the most over the last few days have been the stories you've been telling me. Now, I know that everyone likes to brag, you know, make themselves feel good, show what you can do and so on, and I'm no different. I would like to brag right now, but I don't want to brag about myself. I'd really like to brag about some of you guys, some of the things you guys have been up to, some of the things you've told me about just the last few days, as well as about some of the people that I know about who wanted to be here but could not, and I think it'll be obvious soon why that is the case. Before I tell you some of the stories that really touched me over the last few days, I think we can all agree that hypnosis for us is a force for good. It's something we can use to make the world a better place around us, one person at a time. Whether it's professionally as a therapist or casually with your friends, your families, your colleagues, your co-workers. You know what I mean? So these stories, for me, really, well, I hope I can get through them without bawling like a Japanese schoolgirl, let's put it that way. I remember when I was a student at university, I was studying law, but I was taking a psychology elective. And I learned, you know, good traditional psychological theory that takes 6 months to cure a phobia. Now, I think for everyone in this room, that seems like a crazy thing. Why would you wait 6 months? Do you want to torture them and then do it in 10 minutes? Is that what's going on? So the first hypnotist I'd like to brag about, his name is Steve. He's sitting right over here, actually. And Steve has well, I don't know if you call it a habit or an addiction. When Steve travels, he likes meeting new people. When those new people tell him problems like, I don't know, they have a phobia of flying, he likes to talk to them for a little while. And somewhere around 10, 15 minutes later, when that sort of glazed look fades from their eyes, they can't really believe that something that they've been afraid of lifelong can disappear like that. I'm reminded of just last year in Barcelona. We were out in Barcelona doing a training, and he was sitting in the bar, the restaurant area there. And there's a couple there, a nice couple from Canada. And as they got talking, turns out the woman had a phobia of flying, so intense that she had to get drunk before getting on the plane, and her husband practically had to carry her on. That's a lot of fear, isn't it? 10 minutes later, of course, she was stunned and confused and very happy, but she didn't believe anything had happened until she took her flight the next day and sent him a text message from Canada saying, "I have no idea what you did. I didn't even think it worked. I thought you were just doing some amusing gag. But for the first time in my life, I sat on a plane and I didn't worry for 7 hours, 8 hours of the flight about all the ways that I could die. I don't know how to say this other than say thank you." As I look out this room, I see 500 hypnotists. I see 500 people with exactly the same skill. 500 people who could be sitting next to one in an airport who is drinking themselves into a stupor because they don't know how to undo those emotions. But you can. Isn't that a force for good? Then we have Jane. This is not her real name. Jane's a hypnotist. About 4 years ago, she took in a young girl, about 14, 15, sexually abused. Her father had rented her out to his friends. Not a very good father. So she took her in because there's no way she could leave her in an environment like that. And at first this young girl was just very scared, didn't trust adults, quite rightly so. Anything overt or anything that looked like, giving her any kind of instructions, she wouldn't respond to. And at the time, she probably spent as much time in a hospital as she did out of it. Now Jane treated her with kindness. She did nothing too obvious, but every day, every other day, maybe every other week, maybe whilst they're cooking something or they go for a walk, she just talked to her. And she told stories. Stories about her own life, stories about her friends, stories about cool animals that she's been interested in, like the cowardly quokka who throws its own children in the path of the wolves when they attack, or the incredible honey badger that's afraid of nothing. And as time passed, in the second year, the hospital visits went down to 2 or 3. In the third year, there were no more visits, but drugs, alcohol, that was still a bit of an issue when something shocking happened. But 4 years have passed now, maybe 5. You wouldn't recognize this young girl. Young lady, actually. She laughs again. She trusts people again. She makes mistakes like every teenager does, of course. But she doesn't go to a hospital once she's done that. She doesn't take drugs when she does that. She's just gone through a very turbulent time, a lot of pressure, something that if that happened just 2 years ago would have sent her for a 3-month stay at the local psych ward. And she handled it with grace. I think that's a force of good, don't you? Some in this room is 2 hypnotists, Katya and Raluca. I can't quite see where you're at, but that's okay, you can stay anonymous. Oh, there you go. Last night they went to the Strip, right, just to check it out. We're in Vegas after all. They go to the shuttle stop, and somewhere near the shuttle stop there is a very angry drunk. You know the kind of person that you take one look at them, you cross the road, or you'd rather walk home than to hang around the bus stop because that's probably not where you want to be. He was a very angry drunk, but something about him spoke to them. And though they're female, and though they are slight of build, they walked up to him and started talking to him. Now, to give you an example of what I mean by angry drunk, for the first, 5, 10, 15 minutes, he ranted and raved about he was going to kill everyone, how he has a gun and he's going to shoot them all. Is that an intense situation? They don't run away. They stay there. They talk to him. They use their skills to let him drain all the anger, the frustration, the despair. And then a story comes out. And it gives me goosebumps even thinking about that story. This poor man, his daughter, a nurse, died, a week or so ago. He flew in from Canada 4 days ago to pick up her remains. And he can't deal with the grief, guilt. So for 4 days, he became drunk and more drunk. And he passed from despair and frustration into anger. So they talked to him for a little while. They drained the emotions. They helped heal little pieces. Just enough. Before they stepped on that bus to see the strip, for their own trip, he sat there and broke down in tears and thanked them. Is that a force for good? Jack is not here today. It's not his real name, by the way. I haven't got permission to mention his real name at this point. About, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that, he was on a business trip. He was abroad. He gets called back suddenly. His girlfriend, who's pregnant, has been rushed to hospital. He's of course concerned. He arrives to the doctors. They need to operate. They need to give a C-section, take the baby out, because the poor girl, she's hyperventilating, her blood chemistry's gone through the roof, her blood pressure is going crazy, her heart's racing 1,000,000 miles an hour, she's having constant panic attacks, and it's this or she won't survive. She needs to calm down, they need to do something. But here's the problem. The baby is at a critical stage of development. If they take it out now, the chances of the baby surviving are so slim as to not exist. But if they can wait 2 days, 48 hours, not much. If they can somehow delay the symptoms she's experiencing right now that are putting her life in jeopardy, if they can calm her down for just 2 days, those 2 days are the difference between life and death. But they're getting this surgery, operating theatre ready because they've got to do something now. So he says to the doctor, "Give me half an hour." Goes in there. He didn't know what to say. But he's been well trained. So he starts talking to his girlfriend. he starts telling us stories. He starts slowing his voice. He's so adamant that he has to do something. Failure is not an option here. He doesn't know quite how he did it. But his unconscious mind pulled together all the years of his learnings, his studies, his trainings, all the people he's worked with, everything he's read, everything he's learned, everything he knows, and probably something he didn't even know he knew. And breathing is the first thing that slows down. Your heartbeat follows. Then her blood pressure. Her biochemistry starts to regulate. 30 minutes later, when the senior doctor in the ward comes in, he cannot believe his eyes. What the hell did you do? And can you do it again? He frog marches him to the other end of the ward, where another lady is having a similar issue. She's in a bad state. He pushes him and says, talk to her. And he does. Is that a force for good? I think hypnosis is fundamentally a force for good. We can do such amazing things. Every one of you here in the room has the gift of doing things that belong in a science fiction movie. We do it routinely, do we not? And it's sometimes easy to forget that what we have really is special. And I don't mean that you have a special talent or a special gift, or that God touched you and said you will be the anointed one that can do things that no one else can do. No, because each one of you had to learn. You learned a skill, you studied, you worked, you failed, and then you worked again. And I'm sure that everyone in this room at one point or another got so frustrated with your learning process that you even considered giving up hypnosis at some point, right? But something kept you going. Something that's more important. Something inside you that said, this is worthwhile. And so you stayed. And you sharpened those skills. You got past the problem. I think that fundamentally any profession that serves others in this and other ways is a profession that has dignity, and is one that dignifies the person that applies himself or herself in a genuine spirit of service. And I hope you'll agree with me on this. And I think this is why we are here today, is it not? To learn from our peers, to see what someone else is doing, to acquire more skills, more knowledge, more insight, so that when we go out there, we can be a Jane, a Jack, a Steve, a Katya, or a Luca. This is an important set of skills we have. And what you're doing here is much as fun as it has been, and as much fun as will hopefully continue to be. It's important. And because of the nature of this work, because of the nature of how you can apply it, by the time you leave here at the end of your weekend, or if you stay on for the post-conference, the end of your week, you'll be able to leave with more dignity. Because the things that allow you to serve have become enriched. Does it kind of make sense to you guys? Now, on the path to mastery, we all make mistakes. And usually when I talk to my students, I like to brag about how ridiculously large both the volume and of the mistakes and the actual size of each one has been in my career. I have messed up so much. And some of them were funny and some of them were just embarrassing. Some of them were shameful. So, this is not just a seminar trick to say, look, yes, okay, I've been where you've been. I really have done great things and terrible things. I'd like to share some of my shame with you and hopefully some of the lessons I took for that. When I first started in hypnosis, became a full-time hypnotherapist, my first year was awful. I was terrible. I had no business skills. But I was blessed with one particular gift: arrogance. And in my arrogance, whenever I heard of any other hypnotist succeeding, I couldn't help myself but try and pull them down. Tony Robbins is in town. Oh yeah, he's just a hypnotist. No. I can do better than that. Oh, I went to see a hypnotherapist, he stopped me smoking, it was really good. Oh well, he's just using an old process. There's better stuff now. I thought, this is good, I'll get business. I didn't realize how much I was shaming myself. And in a strange way, the less it was working, the more desperately I ran that pattern. Have you ever done this before? You think this is the solution, and when it doesn't work, you think the solution is to do more of it, right? By the end of the first year, it got so, well, let's put it this way. There's a word in England that really describes what I was becoming. In England, we call people like me back then, it's a technical term, we call them arseholes. And I was climbing the ladder of assholes all the way to the top. On my second year, I was probably in the top 10 assholes in London. And London has 24 million people in it. And I'm sure I would have made number one if it hadn't been for Elliot. Now, Elliot is a hypnotist. Elliot is a very successful hypnotist. Elliot is one of the few hypnotists that I know who is making $1 million income from hypnotherapy. It can be done, folks. So, of course, the first time I heard of Elliot, I was at a conference in London, not as big as this, and also not as cool as this, by the way. And, of course, Elliot, oh, amazing, you should meet him, you guys should talk, and, well, I don't know, what has he got to teach me about? And, of course, Elliot was at that conference, so, you know, luckily I had a shred of dignity that I wouldn't actually insult him to his face, so that's how I know I didn't actually quite get to the top of the arsehole ladder, right? But Elliot was a really interesting guy. I started talking to him. And the more I talked to him, the more actually he treated me with kindness and respect, despite my standoffish manner, the more I have to admit, I really liked him. He was a nice guy, he was a good guy. He's someone who really cared. And I have to admit, I was embarrassed, not ashamed yet, but I was embarrassed of my earlier comments. But of course I learned that he was a great success, and now that I liked him, I could actually ask him, show me how you did it. Because remember, I was still arrogant. And we got talking, and he struck a deal with me, which I mean, I lucked out big time. He said to me, look, I have clinics up and down the country, and I need someone to teach my hypnotherapists how to do their job better. If you will teach my guys for free, I will allow you to shadow me in my business and see how I do things. Now folks, if someone who earns a $1 million income from hypnotherapy ever offers you an opportunity like this, don't think. I learned a huge amount of things from him. I learned a huge amount of business things. I learned actually a lot about hypnosis from him. He's actually one of the people that really got me to understand the H+ principle, for those of you who already know me. For those of you who don't worry, it's an inside joke. Well, it's not really funny, but here's the thing. Of all the things that I learned, there are two key attitudes. Actually, it's one attitude, and the second one is just a development of that Elliot had that blew me away, that ripped me off the arsehole ladder and set my feet on the path that I am now, and I am very happy that I met that man. The first insight that he shared with me is that when you speak ill of others, you're really just shaming yourself. That one hurt. The second one hurt worse. Because if you talk ill of your peers, of other hypnotists, you don't just shame yourself, you're actually shaming your entire profession. And it hit me hard. Because I thought I was being professional. I thought I had something to offer. I thought I was doing good. But I was not, because of my attitude. You see, it reminds me of a lot of my teenage days, especially when I started going to university. And I noticed at university something very interesting happening. We're teenagers, everyone is acting out, Like, as the saying goes, we try to fix the world whilst we still know everything, right? And I noticed a lot of people around me at the time were getting into the whole revolutionary spirit, burn it down, bangs, bah, burn it down. Unfair. We have corporations raping Africa, the South Americas, burn them down. And whilst I kind of sympathized with the general attitude that it'd be nice if people didn't get screwed over in the world, I'm not too sure that burning it all down is a good idea. I mean, think about our civilization. We didn't burn it down and build it up again because we didn't like it. We evolved, we added, we grew things. And so today, what we have, the cell phones, the laptops, the cars, the houses, the running water, the electricity, these are all things we've inherited because our ancestors were willing to not burn things down, but build on them and improve them until they gave us our current quality of life. There's something inherently violent about revolution, do you not think? So I sympathized, but I didn't quite join those circles because I know violence was never my thing. So Isaac Newton was a great man, I'm sure you all know. He's the man who invented physics and probably half of mathematics. Anyone here, if you hate maths and physics, he's the guy you should blame. Isaac Newton was a genius. I mean, he single-handedly created the entire field of physics and worked out how everything works. And when people quite rightly praised his amazing work and how lucid and clear and powerful it all was, do you know what his answer was? I stood on the shoulders of giants. An angry teenager wants to burn things down. An angry teenager wants to find giants so they can slay them, so they can show the world, look how strong I am. But that's the vestiges of childhood not letting go yet. I don't want to burn anything down. I do want to find giants, but only so that I can climb on their shoulders and see the world from there. And I have been very fortunate. Elliot was one giant, and I've met many since. And the reason I'm here, and the reason I feel deeply honored that Scott and Richard asked me to be here today, is because I stood on the shoulders of giants. In fact, I'm still standing on them. They're still holding me up. So I want to find those giants, and I want to stand on those shoulders so that we can evolve these wonderful skills. So that 20 years from now, there are more Jacks and Janes and Steves and Catties in this world, being a force for good and serving in a greater and greater capacity. So in the spirit of that, I'd like to propose a toast, if I may. If you don't have glasses, I'll take a high five. I'd like to propose a toast to evolution, so that all of us can stand on the shoulders of giants. To evolution. Thank you very much, guys.